Hello everybody and welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. Holbeck Little Folk and a scruffy large hairy hermit that lived on our land. This account comes in from a witness and he allowed me to share it with you all. When I was a boy, myself and my brother used to live on a country estate called Holbeck Manor. It was an extremely old manor house. It was steeped in history and it's very close to a Viking burial ground in Lincolnshire. To get to the manor, you would have to go down a long driveway, which is about a mile and a half long. Halfway down this driveway, there's a stone bridge with a stream on one side and a lake and a boathouse on the other. Most of the drive has wooded areas running along it, then the lake, and then to the back of the house there are more woods. Our first encounter occurred at this bridge on a snowy winter's morning. Myself and my brother were given a wooden sledge to play with, as there was snow on the ground. So we took it up to just above the bridge, as there was a nice drop from there back down to the bridge, which was perfect for sledding. My brother sat on the sledge and I pushed him, and once we'd gotten some speed up, I let go, and off my brother went down the driveway towards the bridge. As he got to the bridge, he lost control, crashing into the wall of the bridge and falling into the snow, which was a good height, luckily. When he landed, I waited for him to get up, but he wasn't moving. So I ran down to him thinking he'd hurt himself badly. As I approached, I realised he was just messing around, and I helped him get up, and as I did, I heard a laugh coming from above us. Instantly we both looked up, and there he was, a little man. He was roughly a foot high, maybe a foot and a half at the most. He was sat on the pillar at the end of the wall, and he was laughing at us. He was wearing a dark green suit, and he had the yellowest blonde hair I'd ever seen. He didn't seem nasty in any way, and I think he was amused watching us play in the snow. But seeing as we were still young boys, I instantly got scared and I grabbed my little brother's hand and started to run back to the cottage with him to my dad. As we ran back, I looked behind us and I saw him stand up, and he gave us a wave, as if to say, "Thanks, see you later." When we got back to my parents' cottage, we told our dad what we'd just seen, and he didn't believe us at first, but we persuaded him to come and have a look with us. The cottage we lived in was a few minutes' walk from the bridge, and when we got there, the little man had gone. You could see where we'd crashed the sledge, and you could see the sledge itself. My dad checked on top of the bridge, but he said he didn't find any footprints. But he told us later, when the story would come up, that the snow on top of the bridge was disturbed, like the little man had brushed his prints away. My dad was the groundsman for the estate, and my granddad was in charge of the livestock and the horses. When I told my granddad about it, he wasn't surprised, and he told us a lot of stories about the little folk who live in the woods on the estate. As for the small folk, I'm not the only one in my family to see them. My nan, who's in her 80s, can still recall her sightings of fairies and leprechauns from her childhood in Ireland. She said she saw them right up until she was sent to England, which I believe was when she was about 16 years old. The second sighting was some years later on my dad's farm. We had a bad spate of fox attacks on our hens, and I was tasked with staying out there to catch the culprit. I was out one evening until about 11 p.m, but nothing out of the ordinary happened, and there was no sign of the fox, so I went in and went to bed. But I got up really early the next morning, about 5 a.m, and I went back out to check if any chickens had met their end by Mr. Fox. I had checked 3 huts and all was well, but as I went around the 4th chicken hut, I spotted the tail end of something going round the back of the shed. As I went around after it, there was this little man. He was a little bigger than the previous one I'd seen with my brother. This one was about 2'3". He was wearing all brown, but he had the same blonde hair as the other little fellow. He didn't spot me straight away, as he had his back to me, and he was rustling through the nest boxes where the hens lay their eggs. I shouted out, "Hey, what you doing?" But I got no reply. He just pulled back for a split second, took one look at me, and he was off towards the ditch where the grass was long. The grass was about 4 feet high at that point. I gave chase, but he was faster than anyone I've ever seen before, and that was the last I saw of the little folk. I have spoken to a few people about the subject, but not many people believe you when you tell them. I found that the older generation who work on the land around here, where I grew up, knew far more about them, but they were very reluctant to talk about them. After finding your channel and watching a few of your videos, especially on Bigfoot in the UK, I think I may have seen one. Back then, I didn't know what he was. We just called him the Scruffy Man. The Scruffy Man lived in some woods on our land, which had a pond in the middle. It was originally used to water the crops in summertime. My dad always told me and my brother to stay away from there, to stay away from the pond and the woodland, because it was not near to any roads or houses. But it did run quite close to where the tractors would go. Myself and my brother were a bit naughty back then, and we did sneak down there a few times. The first time I saw him, well, I smelt him first, was when I was down by the water looking for newts and frogs. I could smell this rotten rubbish smell, and I was wondering what it was. I looked up, and there he was in the tree line. He was just watching us. He didn't say anything. He just stood there like a statue, stone still, just staring. I don't remember any clothing, just his hairy face and how big he looked. It was a bit like a gorilla's face, but on a man, or from what I now know, a kind of black Neanderthal type face with a big nose, big brows, but he was all hairy, and that's all I can honestly remember of him. We would see him run from one hedgerow to the other hedgerow and back to the wooded area, but we would only see him from the tractor cab. I always put him down to just being an overly scruffy, hairy man lived in our woods at the back of our farm. I'm not even 100% sure it was a Bigfoot, but to describe him, he was about 7 feet tall, was all black in colour, and he smelt like rotting rubbish. My dad would see him by the old pond, which was not used any longer. He had a good thicket growing around it, and it was miles from the road, and we stayed away from that part of the land mostly. But you would catch a glimpse of him when you were passing in the tractor. Like I say, it might have been just a homeless man. But the more I think about it, the more I think it may not have been. A short walk from the farm and along the beach, we find another report of a strange creature known locally as the red and white-chested hairy person of Saltfleet Marsh. This witness report came into me through the BBR group on Facebook, and it said, it must have been about 10 years ago now, and I think I took the report in 2016, so somewhere around 2006. I was walking along the edge of the Saltfleet Marsh, that's in East Lincolnshire. It was in the winter, and we were out with our 2 dogs, and we were just letting them run off the lead along the marshes. It gets pretty deserted down there, and the area itself seems very bleak at times. There aren't many woodlands right on the edge of the beach. They're a little further inland. Right along the beachfront there are lots of thick, tall gorse bushes and tall grasses that the deer and rabbits live in. There are also some abandoned buildings scattered about. As we were walking along, we saw someone walking towards us in the distance at first, about 500 metres away. And he was along the bottom of the dunes. We both watched as the figure got closer, as there was something strange about this person. And at this distance, the figure approached us. It looked like a big man, dressed all in white, with what looked like a reddish apron on his front. But for some reason, the gait on the figure was so strange, it made us both stop. And we watched it, and we both felt a bit cautious and wary of it for some unknown reason. Without verbalising it, we both decided to turn around and walk briskly back the way we'd come. We kept turning around, checking and looking. Well, that person was moving very quickly, and he was easily gaining on us. We started to run, and both dogs were running with us. I honestly thought it would catch up to us. When it got to within about 200 metres of us, I could see it was not a person, and it was not an apron. This creature was very pale. It had pale fur, but it had this reddish-brown marking on this shaggy hair fur across its chest. It didn't stop to look closer, and we ran all the way home. We've not been back to that area since, and I haven't discussed it with anyone but my sister until I came across your site. Another report in the same area, quite close to the farm mentioned, where the Hairy Hermit was, is an area called South Cockerington. And in 2010, to be precise, on the 13th of August and the 15th of August 2010, 2 policemen are appealing for information after a monkey ran out in front of a patrol car in Lincolnshire. PC Paul French said he was travelling along Mill Hill Way in South Cockerington when he spotted the animal on Friday morning. He said he then searched for the animal, but he couldn't find it. PC French has appealed for anyone who is missing a pet monkey or has any further information on where it could have escaped from to come forward. PC French said, I thought it could have been a squirrel at first, but it paused for a moment and it stood on its hind legs. It looked at me and then scampered off over the hedge. PC Ian Garrick has come forward to say he also spotted the animal in the same location 2 days later on the Sunday. A police spokesman said no one had come forward to report a missing monkey. Another report that's in the same area also is the white-eyed creature, Chapel St Leonards, December 2016, and this is also on that same coast. This sighting account was taken by a member of BBR and it was passed along to me, and the statement was taken by Thomas John Goodfellow. He took the report in December of 2016, and it's from a gentleman and a lady called Keitha and Jacqueline. And they contacted him due to knowing that he was a member of the team and that he collected reports. He said, they contacted me and they both experienced something quite frightening when they were out walking with their 2 dogs along the seafront up near the Anderby Creek area of Chapel St Leonards. They both decided earlier to walk a route they usually used, and they set out for an evening walk with the dogs. As it was dark due to the time of year and the small amount of street lighting, they both had lit torches in their hands. Chapel St Leonard Beach is on the Lincolnshire coastline, as I've said, and it's located next to the resort town of the same name. And in winter time, it's a pretty desolate place. 1 mile north of the main beach entrance is Chapel Point, and that's a defensive structure built during the Second World War. It's also a popular viewing point for bird watchers because it's Saltfleet Marshes. There's hundreds and hundreds of birds. The area has a number of nature reserves that can be accessed directly from the beach. As the couple headed up the main ramp entrance to the seafront, they were using their torches to light the way when they both suddenly stopped as the torchlight panned across the trees. They realised as the torches moved along, they lit up a large, upright, unrecognisable creature, approximately 200 feet off in the distance to the right-hand side of the couple. The creature had possibly been moving back inland and was caught out before it had reached the tree line. It was running along the beach walkway, trying to get back to the cover of the woods, Thomas said. There was no sound from the creature. You couldn't hear any growls or anything like that. The only distinctive facts were that it was stood upright at approximately 7 feet to 7.5 feet tall and had bright white eyes. Thomas wondered if this could be from the torch or the reflection of the torchlight maybe. After around 8 to 10 seconds, the creature moved off into the tree line and was out of sight. The couple carried on walking away from the creature, quickly down onto the seafront walkway, when they started to hear loud sounds to the right of them in the trees. The noises sounded like wood hitting wood, an almost knocking sound. Without thinking, they both shined the lights towards the sound and saw a pair of eyes staring back at them. The eyes were clearly visible, with no movement, just a constant stare. Those eyes never left them or blinked at any point. Now, the young couple became so scared by this point that they started to run away. So scared that they picked up the dogs as they went. Kiefer looked behind one last time to see if they were being followed, and he saw the same creature standing on the walkway behind them, less than 150 feet away. It was a dark, upright figure. It was all brown and black in colour, with a pair of bright white eyes. The skin was dark, but lighter around the face and the hands. And at this point, they ran to the safety of home, locked the doors, and they've been there ever since. And obviously this conversation happened on the day after, so, they haven't been there all those years. They phoned me up within half an hour of calming down a little, said Thomas, and I was able to speak to them at length about the whole event. Up until this point, they had always not taken what I do with any merit, said Thomas. And I do understand this, as it's a very new subject to most. I've not told them yet about the other encounters in the area. I just wanted to tell them what happened and how it happened, and I took the detail from them. And I got that down in any description that they could supply. After I'd given this couple a chance to calm down and reflect on the encounter, I contacted them again, and sometimes a second chat can pull out further details. But at this point, they didn't really have anything more to add, he said. But I could tell they were really nervous, and they wanted to know if these creatures ever attack. I explained that at no point did it try to approach them or harm them. It just made them scared enough to run away by standing there and looking at them. Something must have driven it out of the tree line, and I think the couple caught it unawares, maybe. I think it was an accidental event. Now, the area in which these reports took place is a haven for many of our wildlife species in the UK. Set between woodland and the northeast coast, there are ample food and cover resources for any animal known or unknown to access. With easy access through the nature reserves, the whole of the northeast coast is accessible. There are a number of estuaries leading inland, all along the northeast coast. Farm fields are filled with crops and livestock, and they make up a great majority of this route. And in all honesty, from the tip of the northeast coast to the very toe, you don't have to walk far to find a sighting report. And that seems to be the case all across the UK now, as the reports come in more and more. And I hope you've enjoyed this report tonight, and I would like to thank all of the witnesses that were happy to share. And I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in and taking the time to listen to these. If you get a moment and you don't mind, would you give it a share on the social media, or click like or subscribe, and it'd be really, really appreciated. So until next time, stay safe, everybody. Good night.